There's something extraordinary about a woman who doesn't chase the spotlight, yet the light somehow finds her. She walks through rooms with presence not because she demands attention, but because her essence carries depth. She doesn't just exist, she creates meaning in every season she walks through. Her greatness isn't loud, it's intentional, and often it's forged in silence, in solitude, and in the shadows of her becoming. In a world where distractions scream and validation is often mistaken for value, there are women who still choose the long road. The road of alignment, not applause. The road of truth, not trend. And though that road is quieter, it leads to a place of undeniable power because it is rooted in identity, not imitation. This message is for that woman, the woman who is becoming more herself with each challenge, the woman who has stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing herself, the woman who is no longer seeking to prove her worth, but is simply living it. Today we'll explore 20 signs that reveal a woman is meant for greatness, not because she has everything figured out, but because she's willing to grow through everything she faces. These signs are not about perfection. They're about direction. They're not about fame. They're about fulfillment. And if you recognize these signs in yourself, or even just a few, don't dismiss them. They may be whispers of a calling bigger than you ever imagined. There's a defining moment in every woman's life when she realizes that not every room she enters will understand her. She begins to recognize that choosing purpose sometimes means walking away from the very things that once gave her comfort. The likes, the approval, the invitations, the validations, she no longer craves them the way she once did. Not because they don't feel good, but because they don't feed the mission she's here for. When a woman begins to choose purpose over popularity, she makes a quiet shift. It's not a loud declaration. It's a decision made deep within. She stops asking, "Will they like me if I do this?" and starts asking, "Is this aligned with why I'm here?" That shift might cost her some attention. It might cause friction in relationships built on her old patterns, but it gives her something far more valuable: clarity. Clarity doesn't always bring ease. Often, it brings solitude. But she begins to understand that loneliness is not the same as being lost. In fact, solitude becomes a space of revelation. She starts to hear her own voice again, not the filtered voice that pleases everyone else, but the raw, honest one that whispers direction when no one's watching. When a woman chooses her path over popularity, she doesn't become cold or detached. She becomes focused. Not focused on perfection, but on alignment. She asks herself hard questions. She pauses when something feels off. She lets go of what no longer reflects the woman she's becoming. And though others might not understand, she doesn't need them to. She's learning that integrity is worth more than attention. And then something else happens. The more she honors her path, the less she's shaken by the pressure to perform. The more she honors her pace, the less she compares it with others. She stops running a race she never signed up for. And in doing so, she finally begins to move in rhythm with something authentic. That kind of woman starts to feel different to be around. Not because she tries to stand out, but because she no longer tries to blend in. Her presence carries weight, her decisions carry intention, her boundaries aren't defensive, they're declarations of what matters to her. And slowly, her life starts to reflect not just what she wants, but who she really is. Still, this kind of strength doesn't mean she's immune to pain. In fact, she probably feels deeply. But the difference is in how she responds. She doesn't let hurt turn her bitter. She doesn't let betrayal harden her spirit. When someone wrongs her, she may grieve, she may cry, but she does not seek revenge. She seeks wisdom. There's a difference between reacting and responding. She learns this difference through experience. She sees that revenge offers a temporary high and a long-term drain. It might feel like power in the moment, but it always leaves a void. So she takes a different path. She turns inward before she acts outward. She asks what this moment is teaching her, and when the answer comes, she uses it. Her recovery isn't always visible. It's the silent kind, the kind that happens when she chooses to grow instead of retaliate, the kind that builds internal strength instead of public spectacle, the kind that says, I'm not going to let this change who I am, only who I trust. Forgiveness for her is not about letting others off the hook. It's about releasing herself from their grip. She doesn't forget what happened. She doesn't excuse it, but she refuses to live in it. Her healing becomes a form of quiet justice. She becomes more thoughtful, not more guarded, more discerning, not more disconnected. She may even thank the pain, not for what it did, but for what it revealed. She begins to see that every scar carries a story, but not every story defines her. Some just refine her. And when the next challenge comes, she's not afraid of it. She's familiar with recovery. She knows how to lose and still not lose herself. This kind of resilience doesn't just make her stronger, it makes her magnetic. Not in a flashy way, but in a grounded way. People notice something steady in her. They sense that her peace didn't come cheap, that her wisdom isn't theoretical, it's earned. And though she may never say it out loud, every step she takes now is shaped by a quiet conviction. She didn't come this far just to survive. She came to live with purpose. And so she does. A woman who is meant for greatness does something subtle but powerful. She stops looking outward for confirmation and starts looking inward for conviction. The shift is not immediate. It begins quietly, often after moments of disappointment when the applause doesn't come or when praise is given to someone playing a lesser game. But something deep inside her starts to awaken. She realizes that chasing validation is a never-ending cycle, one that always leaves her needing the next fix. And so she chooses a different compass, her values. Values don't shift with trends. They don't waver under pressure. They don't need an audience to be real. Values are what guide her when no one is watching. They inform her choices when the spotlight is off. They shape how she speaks, how she shows up, how she treats people who can offer her nothing. And the more she leans into these values, the more she begins to notice the noise around her quiet down, not because the world has changed, but because her focus has. Living by values over validation means choosing integrity over image. It means doing the right thing, even when it means saying no to shortcuts that might bring success faster, but at the cost of her soul. That kind of discipline doesn't always look glamorous, but it builds something lasting. It builds trust, with herself first and then with others. People begin to realize they can rely on her not because she's perfect, but because she's anchored. Anchored people don't get swept away by every opinion. They listen, they adapt, but they don't lose their center. And that center is shaped not by the pursuit of approval, but by a commitment to becoming someone they themselves respect. That's a quiet kind of power, not the kind that shows off, but the kind that shows up, consistently, humbly, fully. And when things go wrong, and they always do, she doesn't crumble under the weight of failure. That's another sign of a woman becoming great. She rewrites what failure means. Instead of seeing it as a verdict on her worth, she sees it as data, as feedback, as part of the process, not one she enjoys, but one she no longer fears. She understands something crucial. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. It's what shapes character, hones skill, tests resolve. Every time she fails, she's given a choice to quit or to question. She chooses the latter. She asks what this moment is trying to teach her, what pattern it's trying to reveal, what weakness it's trying to strengthen. And in doing so, she extracts wisdom from the rubble of what didn't work. This doesn't mean she likes to fail. It means she refuses to let failure define her. She may need time to process, to feel, to regroup, but she doesn't stay down. She doesn't spiral into shame or resentment. She's built resilience not just through motivation, but through mindset. She treats failure like a mentor, not a kind one, but a necessary one that exposes blind spots, one that humbles pride, one that clarifies what really matters. Most people avoid failure like it's a plague. She faces it like it's a mirror. And sometimes the reflection is uncomfortable. Sometimes it reveals habits she needs to break, truths she needs to accept, responsibilities she needs to own. But she doesn't turn away. She looks long enough to learn. And when she's done learning, she applies it quietly, intentionally, consistently. That's the thing about women becoming great. They're not waiting for a perfect record. They're building a powerful one. And powerful records include stumbles, pauses, redirections. But what sets her apart is the way she keeps moving, each time with more insight than before. She doesn't pretend to be unshakable, but she does commit to being unbreakable. Her growth is not a straight line. It's a winding path of breakthroughs, setbacks, questions, and clarity. And through it all, she begins to realize that greatness is not about being above mistakes. It's about being willing to rise through them. That realization shifts everything. It takes the pressure off performing and places it on evolving. And evolution always begins with honesty. So she stays honest with herself, with her limits, with her growth edges. She knows there's more to learn, more to become, more to give. But she also honors how far she's come. That balance between humility and confidence is where her strength lives. This woman is not perfect. She's aligned. She's not finished. She's willing. And that willingness to live by values, to welcome failure as part of the journey, is what makes her a force quiet, grounded, undeniable. There comes a time when a woman no longer seeks to belong in every room. She begins to understand that not every space is meant for her voice, and not every table is one she should sit at. This realization doesn't come from pride, it comes from clarity. When she begins to protect her energy, she is not closing herself off. She is simply being intentional about what she allows in. Protecting energy is not about building walls, it's about setting filters. A woman meant for greatness knows that her presence is powerful but also limited. She cannot pour into everything and everyone. Not every conversation deserves her response. Not every battle requires her sword. She learns to choose her engagements with care, not because she's distant, but because she's discerning. This discernment changes the way she interacts with the world. She no longer chases chaotic relationships or dramatic circles. She stops giving time to people who only take. She releases the pressure to explain her boundaries because she understands that those who truly respect her don't need explanations. They feel the standard in her silence. And she lets go of the guilt that once came with saying no. No becomes a sacred word. Not rude, not cold, just honest. And in that honesty, she reclaims her peace. Peace is no longer a luxury, it's a non-negotiable. She doesn't need noise to feel alive. She finds life in stillness. Growth in quiet, power in solitude. There's a depth to her now that only comes from choosing stillness over noise. People may not always understand this shift. Some will call her distant. Others may say she's changed, And they're right, she has, but not for the reasons they assume. She hasn't changed to hurt others, she's changed to heal herself, to guard the parts of her that once leaked out into spaces that didn't value them. And now she chooses differently. Choosing peace over approval is not the easiest decision. It comes with trade-offs, but it's in these choices that her character deepens. She becomes the kind of woman who isn't shaken by external chaos because she's built internal calm. Not the fake calm of pretending, but the kind that comes from living in alignment, from no longer explaining her soul to people committed to misunderstanding it. With that peace comes another strength: consistency. A woman meant for greatness doesn't wait for motivation to show up before she takes action. She doesn't need the stars to align before she begins. She understands that discipline is a better guide than emotion, that progress is built on repetition, on the days when it's boring, on the mornings when it's hard, on the evenings when no one is clapping. She keeps showing up. Consistency is not glamorous, it rarely gets praised in the moment, but it's what separates those who dream from those who build. She knows this, so she commits, not just once, but daily. Not just when it's exciting, but especially when it's not. She holds herself to the vision she claimed, even when her feelings try to negotiate her out of it. And here's the powerful truth: she doesn't do this to impress anyone. She does it because she understands the future is shaped by what she repeats. Her routines are not random. Her habits are not hopeful. They are strategic, aligned, purposeful. She doesn't wake up hoping to find greatness. She wakes up acting like someone who's already becoming it. The outside world may not notice these efforts at first. That's fine. She's not working for an audience. She's building a foundation. Every act of discipline is a brick. Every consistent step forward is structure. And eventually, what's invisible becomes undeniable. People start to ask how she did it, what her secret was, but there is no secret, only the invisible grind of showing up when it's hard, staying true when it's tempting to quit, and choosing the long road when the shortcuts appear faster. This kind of woman doesn't need grand gestures. Her greatness is not loud, it's steady, not forced, it's embodied. She doesn't burn out because she's not sprinting to prove anything. She's walking with purpose, and her consistency becomes the evidence of her conviction. In a world that celebrates the highlight reel, she values the behind the scenes. She trusts the quiet work, the daily discipline, the unseen hours. And over time, those quiet hours begin to speak loudly. They shape her mindset, her standards, her future. They teach her what no amount of external applause ever could. Greatness, after all, is not about one moment. It's about momentum, and she knows how to build it.